Hey everybody, this is Perch answering a reader email here who's kind of answering mine. So this is on the topic of my video that I did for Rules for Critique. And basically in that video I said, kind of exasperated. And keep in mind, the point of this video was to say, look, I'm tired of seeing seeing people basically respond to any kind of negative comment, whether it's a raving, mouth-frothing lunatic, or whether it's just somebody saying, I didn't really like this comic, by saying, "Oh, that's hate speech." The brush of saying that something is attacking me, that the words are violence, this is hate speech, has become such a massively wide brush. I finally did get around to going to watch the Thinking Critical video, the specific one that triggered Vita so heavily around the Nubia and the Amazon video. And look, Wes describes things differently than I do. I think he tends to go in more on certain topics and take them in a direction I don't go in. But, you know, compared to, for example, just some guy did a video on the same topic, not a peep from Vita on that one. More than, I think by the time of this recording, more than 20x the views, and yet nothing to just some guy. Why is that? That seems weird. Why the attention on Wes's? Wes's was much more polite. Again, mine would have been even more polite, or milquetoast, depending on if you like me or not. That's fine, whatever. But you know, what gives? So the video I did was really to say, like, look, can we just, it's a put your cards on the table. What exactly do you want? And maybe in some ways it's a little bit to some of the creators, stop jumping at every faint bit of critique, because I absolutely think you can be angry and you can block, and you can block whatever you want. It's your Twitter account. But if you want to be angry and you want to call out somebody who's maybe calling you an offensive name or screaming at you or saying they wish you would die, those kinds of things, yeah, as a creator, you're 100% justified to call that. Again, the words don't matter, like hate speech, violent speech. Unfortunately, there's so much there. But that's clearly a dick move on the part of the person giving that critique. No doubt about it. But if it stopped there, I don't know that many people would have a problem with it. The problem is it's evolved way past that into just kind of any kind of disagreement. I remember what I did like Michael Conrad's writing the Wonder Woman book. He tweets before the comic comes out, "Oh, I'm worried about Twitter tomorrow because I know a bunch of dude bros are going to be all pissed about this comic that features a male version of Wonder Woman, because she was in the multiverse. There's a male. Everybody's gender swapped in this reality." And the male version of Wonder Woman was a big misogynist and running around being a dick. And he's like, I know everybody's going to get mad at me. Nobody got mad at him. Nobody cared, because not many people were reading that book. And also it didn't really matter. But it represented another step in this whole critique argument of getting angry, you know, basically playing the victim card before the book's even come out and anybody's even talking about it. It's nuts. Jeff Thorne on that Rules of Critique video also put some very well thought out comments that I, again, 100% agreed with. Thought he was dead on of, yeah, there are nutcases out there. There's also people who let their egos get out of control and can't take any criticism. He's right. So anyway, this mail comes in and says, Perch, I have to say I'm a little surprised you felt the need to ask about this topic. Well, I mean, I've got to fill 3 videos a day. What you know, how else am I going to do that? Sorry. I think your videos in the past, exposure to social media in general, would have given you the insight necessary to understand what's going on here and how intractable the situation is. Well, in fairness, my card's on the table. Yeah, I think I understand what's going on there pretty clearly. I do. I think that in many ways, my video was intended to kind of call out some ridiculous behavior and hope that, you know, 1% of the people listening to it might go, hey, maybe I'm being a lunatic. I have no hope it would be more than 1%, but I know at least one creator who did write in and go, yeah, you know what, your words had some meaning to me, and I took it to heart, and I do realize I'm overly sensitive about criticism. That was cool to hear. Anyway, as far as how intractable the situation is, I'm afraid you're right there, person who wrote this. Unfortunately, I'm afraid you're right. Anyway, I believe that much of what you're witnessing is a combination of factors, just going on with the mail, including but not necessarily limited to the polarization of the country in general. Yep, 100%. The clear strategic value of that polarization, absolutely. Make no mistake, this polarization, people are profiting off of it, using it to prop up their own careers and egos and other things. Absolutely, there's something there. The interest in conflict for the value of social media. Yep. Dopamine's not going to feed itself. And the general infantilization of the public and a public discourse. Sure. One of the problems with Twitter is that it really does distill, you know, nuanced arguments into word vomit sentences. And that's fine for some things like Arby sucks, or well, I could just go with that. But if you're needing to have a more, complex conversation, like, what's the economic impact of the current spending bills? Trying to explain that in a tweet is impossible. You're just going to be a sarcastic douche in doing it. I forget the exact study, goes the letter writer, but I know that there's at least one out there that suggests that social media, Twitter in particular, reduces the ability to think in a nuanced, sophisticated manner. Yeah, that study is called What We Can All See with Our Eyes. No, I'm joking here, but yes, that is very true. Anyway, so where are we? What is the environment that exists here? We find ourselves in an online system where appearances are very important, where people want a feeling of belonging and then often find it through shared anger, and where others who know how to do it get what they want by claiming victimization, thus activating the previous group. People beyond these groups are forced to comply with a trend or else become targets of it. Ultimately, this is an environment where being correct is less important than simply winning. It's Lord of the Flies, writ digitally and in real time. So absolutely 100% dead on paragraph. Completely agree. The tragedy of this, and it's why I talk about the people, put it this way, if you want people to hate you very quickly on Twitter or even on YouTube, and you'll see it in a lot of the answers, suggest that the two warring sides actually need each other and are so codependent that if one disappeared, they'd have to create it again in order to keep fueling their anger. Nobody likes to hear that. If you go on Twitter and you suggest that some of the outrage is performative, you will get people that lose their shit on you. It won't be just, ignoring. I mean, what's also often is you can tweet something and people come at you and say, why don't you just ignore it? You didn't have to tweet. Yeah, neither did you. You didn't need to respond, dummy. That's the two sides, like you identify very clearly here. The group that is basically finding their time and their place and the dopamine through shared anger, basically activates the second group, who then claims that they are victims, which then feeds back the anger group, and this circles forever. And in the particular topic here, where a video comes out, and the kind of sad part with Vita's tweet was it was just so directive. I mean, Vita, they were going in and they were responding to almost every response to Vita with, claps and a lot of pats for people who are saying things like, I'm going to go beat up the people who say bad things about you, or that person's, wild accusations. People went from, oh, I don't agree with Wes's take, to that's an alt-right Nazi over there who's a hypocrite, and I'll beat him with a stick if I ever see him. And then, you get Vita in there like with gifs of people clapping for that kind of response. Terrible. I mean, that no excuse for that. And it feeds this cycle of absolute hatred. It's a disgusting thing, and it plays out on Twitter in every kind of entertainment sector all the time. It's not healthy. It's not useful. And all it does is spur people up. And nobody goes and actually listens to this. I did the last video, the critique video, and there was one person who came in there and is like, oh, here you go again. Here's Perch carrying water for the alt-right. It's like, whoa. What are you even talking about here? That was nowhere part of any part of the discussion. I can tell you didn't watch my video, probably didn't watch the other one. Why are you so willing to just pick up arms and join this fight without even knowing the fight you're in? It's terrible. And you see this play out all the time. And yes, on both group sides, they need each other. If they didn't have each other, they'd be screwed. Where'd all that attention go? The mail concludes with, quite frankly, nothing can really exist without the circumstances first existing to create it. You drive to create a constructive feedback loop for fans, critics, and creators is one I can sympathize with. But our online environment won't allow it. Personally, I think the only way out is through. That is to say, when the situation becomes untenable, the decision-making players will change. Doesn't matter if the threat exists now or if the destruction is obvious, the major players don't feel a need to move and will not do so until that need develops. Instead of trying to make things better, it might be more productive in the long term. Just let things become worse. I don't suggest jumping on the hate bandwagon, but I do suggest just letting things go. If all the activity becomes too toxic, sales will eventually drop to a point where desperation will take hold, changes will be made to find a way out. The changes won't necessarily be good or have long-term value, but find that the group dynamics are really not possible to control or direct from the ground level. Essentially, this is the Big Two show, and we have to wait until they feel threatened enough to move. Anything beyond that is just a wish. Yeah, it is, and it concludes, that's a cynical thought. That's what I think. Take it for what it's worth. Unfortunately, you're probably right. I do think that economics come into play at some point. That is kind of that untenable aspect you talked about. I don't necessarily believe that things have to get worse before they get better. It's a nice slogan, but that's not always how businesses, how life goes. It's and take it from somebody who's a solid member of Gen X, and that's our mantra in a lot of ways. That along with fuck it, but it doesn't have to be that way. People can be rational. People can try and make it good, and I am an idealist. I think in a lot of ways, in that I don't want it to completely fall apart. I don't want everything to go to zero. I care about comics enough, regardless of selling them as a reader. I care about comics enough that I can't throw in the towel and just let it evaporate. That said, in many cases, one of the best instructors is absolute failure. That may be where we're heading. I don't think it's burn it all down. I don't think you need to take an active role one way or another. I think what you can do is, put it this way, you're on a life raft, people out there drowning, put your hand out, try and pull someone into the life raft. If the person's going to sit there or float there in the water and scream at you that they won't take your hand or for whatever reason, you let them go. And maybe they swim to shore, maybe they drowned. Don't know. For people who want help, for people who want a hand, I'm going to be there with a hand. Sometimes, by the way, that means I'm going to reach out, somebody's going to take my hand, and they're going to stab me in the hand with some kind of knife that they've got hiding in their underwear. I don't know. But anyway, they're going to try and pull me from the boat. May happen. But, me being who I am, I can't just float along and, not offer the hand. Again, does that mean I get stabbed? Yeah, absolutely. Am I comfortable with that? I kind of have to be. It's just me. An interesting response. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time writing the mail. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in there. And I think there's a lot of piece in there that I think hopefully will, people just need to open their eyes a little bit to what's going on. It is a big manipulation. For all the people on the, on the right wing who in some ways correctly point out that Jack Dorsey of Twitter is manipulating things and has a bias and everything else. There's a meme that went around, or not a meme, but a news story, where somebody said after an internal investigation, Twitter found that it promotes right-wing stories more than left-wing stories. And a lot of people are like, well, that's just crazy town. That's ridiculous. No, there's no way. No way. What is this? April Fool's? It's opposite. Twitter is as left as they come. Yeah, I think Twitter absolutely leans left. I also believe the study. You know why? Because Twitter likes rage. And if it leans left, and a lot of its audience is left, what's the way they're going to get engagement? By putting out a nice puff piece about Joe Biden, or by talking about how Trump is a lunatic? They're going to put out right-wing stories. They're going to promote some of this stuff because it generates engagement and activity. I absolutely think that's a strategy. Yeah, I do think if you somehow are able to analyze everything Twitter does, I'll bet you would find that they trend right-wing stories more. I think they do that on purpose. I think they do that because it activates their core audience in a way that positive or agreeable stories would not. I think it's all a game. I think all this is all a game. All of it. So we just have to figure out how we want to play. Thanks for listening.